I was told when I started the British line that HMS Invincible and HMS Glorious were two fairly overpowered ships for their tiers, and honestly the people that say this aren't entirely wrong. Both of these ships are extremely strong in a down tier to the point that they're almost final boss levels of unkillable for many destroyers and cruisers that they can face, while also dealing back heavy-handed damage with their large caliber shells. In a down tier, both of these ships only have three major threats that they have to contend with, and two of them can be fairly difficult for the enemy ships to utilize. The first of the more difficult threats are torpedoes, which while there are many destroyers at these battle ratings, a skilled captain will keep a moderate distance from those ships, giving plenty of space to evade the torpedo spread or just move behind cover. The second of these is a turret fire. Invincible especially seems to enjoy copying the German battleships and exploding if she has a main turret catch even the slightest fire. But it's also hard for the enemy ships to accomplish since these are fairly heavily armored turrets on these two battlecruisers. The last threat that easily sinks these ships, and they can't do much about, is aircraft. Bombers can have a field day against these two battlecruisers as they lack any substantial anti-aircraft firepower, and bombs tend to rip them apart. These ships also have a few other pros and cons of their designs that both aid in these down tier stompings and hamper them in other ways. Both battlecruisers are quite fast for early battleship sized vessels, and turn quite well for their size too, making torpedo evasion or general positioning a lot easier. They also pack a massive punch against light vessels with their semi-armor piercing rounds, which will tend to cause both massive damage and massive flooding when they do hit, many times sinking a ship outright before the flooding can even be repaired. I do say when they hit, however, as both Invincible and Glorious have major accuracy issues, which hurts their damage along with the long reload times that their main batteries have. Invincible helps us a bit since it has twice the main guns as Glorious, albeit they are a bit smaller, but they have extremely restrictive firing arcs and can be very tough and frustrating to keep on targets. Also, while both ships have numerous secondaries, they don't really impress me, as with their long shell flight times and weak damage output, they really don't tend to do much, though at closer ranges they do tend to rip destroyers apart if said destroyers don't maneuver. The secondaries also have wonky ranges at which they will fire at. While it's not as much of a problem on Glorious, on Invincible it's definitely like a 10-kilometer range, maybe less. I want to say it's more closer to 9. That is the max range for these secondaries, so anything beyond that you'll just be not able to touch with them, I guess. HMS Glorious also gets the bonus of many hull-mounted torpedoes that are actually pretty decent, which can surprise a lot of players. A lot of battleships won't expect you to rock up next to them and just dump 40 torpedoes into their side. I don't think it has quite that many, but it honestly wouldn't surprise me. They're quite numerous and you can spam them out quite a bit. The kicker for these ships is in an up tier. They really suffer against other battleships, especially larger ones, as they lack the accuracy or firepower to really punch back. Other battleships also practically ignore their armor, and in a straight up fight you will find yourself quickly running out of crew and modules before being sent to the bottom. Even the large 6.0 cruisers can fight these ships straight up for similar reasons, as the relative inaccuracy and long reloads of these two battlecruisers hurts even more when the enemy ship can easily dodge fire and punch back repeatedly before dodging again. A lot of the treaty breaker cruisers are the ones that you should be afraid of in these, such as the Japanese heavy cruisers, the American cruisers, well, not so much them, but stuff like the German cruisers too, tend to beat these ships up pretty badly. Overall, the inaccuracy of these guns really holds you back just because you can't make those shots that count, especially if you're aiming for a magazine or just a module in general and end up hitting the smokestack of the ship or just straddling it completely, even though it is an extremely large target that you are aiming at, and it's rather frustrating when you have to wait 40 seconds before you can fire again, especially on Glorious where you only have two guns that you're working with anyway, or two main battery turrets I should say. Overall, I have found these ships to be quite enjoyable in a down tier, especially when you can just open the enemy team list, see that there's no battleships, battle cruisers, or threatening heavy cruisers on the enemy team, and just sail around and do what you want, albeit avoiding the ships that have pretty strong torpedoes. Though, unlike other ships that are around the same battle ratings like the aforementioned heavy cruisers, these ships really struggle to hold their own against most of the things that they do face in an up tier, and these two battle cruisers really seem to be unable to really contend when they're pressed up into 6.7 especially. They're kind of just free food at that point. 6.0 games they even struggle in quite a bit, but like I said, if you're 5.7 and you're the only 5.7 in that game, you're going to just completely dominate. Really, when they are up tiered, they just feel like inaccurate damage pinatas instead of the massive threats that they are when they are in that fully down tiered match. And in my opinion, they are kinda in a weird spot in the matchmaker where it either lets them completely stomp the enemy team or just laughs at them as they get picked off as free damage points. So I'm curious what other people's opinions on these two ships are. Have you had good experiences with them in a up-tiered game, and maybe I'm just having a skill issue here? Or have you kind of seen the same thing that I have, where they're really good in a down tier where you can basically just tank the world and not care, but as soon as you see an up tier match, you kind of just get demolished as soon as an enemy ship looks at you, especially even like a Wyoming or something. Anyways guys, I'm curious to see what you say. Good luck out there, and I'll see you in the next one.